which is coming up on February 19th and 20th, depending on where you live. Here in Hawaii, it's going to be the evening, 9:06 p.m. Hawaii time. In Pacific time, it's 11:06 p.m. And then we start to move into the early morning of the 20th for other locations. And this new moon also marks the culmination of Maha Shivaratri, the great night of Shiva. So I'm going to dive into all of that here. First, I will share my screen and we can see our new moon chart. It's happening, like I said, in the evening of the 19th here in Hawaii. And the moon and sun are coming together in a star called Satabishak. Satabishak is the part of Aquarius. It's right in the middle of Aquarius. And it really has a lot to do with that social quality of Aquarius. Is the natural 11th house. And we see community and society and this desire to create more fair and just systems that work for everyone and not just the people at the top in Aquarius. And Satabishak, we see this more than any of the other stars because it is the nakshatra of 100 healers. It is said that whatever ailment you might contract underneath this particular star, it will require 100 healers to fix or to heal you. Likewise, if you find the remedy or the cure for something that ails you under this star, it will do the magic, the work of 100 healers. But this star also really refers to healing our society and what ails us on a bigger level. Because like I said, it's in the middle of Aquarius, which is really more about community and society than just individual people. The star itself is ruled by Varuna. Varuna is one of the oldest deities from the Rig Veda, and he is often referred to as the god of the ocean. But he's actually the god of the night sun or the dark sun. The star is indicated even by a dark circle. So when the sun goes down, it goes beneath the ocean. And here, Varuna meets his wife, Varuni, who is the goddess of the ocean. And he watches over the night sky with his hundreds of eyes. And these eyes, these stars in the sky, can see what corruption exists. They can see what ill doing is happening between men and women, and seeks justice, seeks a way to fix this or heal this. This star has a lot of potency for the darkness or the underbelly of society, the part of our world that most people want to look away from. You know, we shut our doors at night, we turn on all our lights inside to protect ourselves from the darkness. And most people who live a comfortable existence don't really want to see what's going on, whether it's, you know, literally the dark underbelly of society on the streets and what's happening in the, you know, maybe poorer communities or in crime related activities, or whether it's among the people who are ruling us, right? Whether it's the politicians, the kings, the you know, corporations that dictate so much of what is considered rule of law. Many people would rather not look at that because they don't want to face the level of corruption and the level to which we are being led by those who are trying to maintain their own power. And so this star gives us a chance to really see what we might otherwise not. Every new moon, the moon and sun come together. And this is a joining of our mind, the moon, with our emotions that come along with what's in our mind, the emotions we feel as a result of the activity in our mind, and our consciousness, which is the sun. And so for this reason, the moments leading up to the new moon can be both depressive and meditative. I say depressive because we live in a world that values engagement. It values being present with your mind and emotions, and engaging with others, feeling full, feeling lit up. We don't value the more quietude of the mind. We don't value aloneness as much in our world at this moment in time. And so in the new moon, our mind is less activated. And you can really see this in people's natal charts. If people are born near the new moon as opposed to near the full moon, they tend to just have less emotions and less activity and desire to engage in the world around them, and a need for some solitude, a need for some inner peace. But the plus side of this, if we look at it from a different perspective, instead of just the way society wants us to be or what's the norm in our world, this moon and sun joining together gives us an opportunity to meditate, to sit with ourselves, to allow ourselves to release all the attachments we have to showing up, to being seen, to being engaged with others in the world, and even to the Maya, to the illusion itself that we choose to create in our mind and emotions, right? So every new moon, as we wane to dark, we have the phases leading up to that. And the dark moon, the new moon, and the full moon are both the 15th phase. We call it the Titi, the 15th Titi. And the 14th Titi is considered one that, again, can be very dark. It can be very challenging for us when we're trying to engage in the world, maybe in our relationships or in our work or in our public presence or going to parties or things like this. This is not the time to do that necessarily on that 14th Titi. The 13th Titi, the night of the 13th Titi that leads into the 14th Titi, is called Shivaratri. And this is the night of Shiva. And as I said before, Shiva is consciousness. Well, the sun is consciousness and Shiva is the sun. Shiva is often depicted meditating on a mountain, right? And eons go by where he just sits and meditates before he seeks out his other half, before he seeks out Shakti or Parvati, the matter of this world. And every month they come together in a new moon and create this union between our mind and our consciousness, where our mind is not all the way out there trying to create things, trying to make things, where it's joined with consciousness in that calm, meditative state. And in this month of Falguna, which is correlates to February, March in the Gregorian calendar, we have Maha Shivaratri, the great night of Shiva. And it's said that the tilt of the Earth's axis is such that if we are to sit up and meditate all night and fast and perform other austerities, we are able to access the most clear, the most direct link to consciousness. So it's the absolute best of the Shivaratris to find your connection to source, to allow your mind to marry consciousness. In this particular Shivaratri, you can see we have Saturn joined the sun and the moon, or this particular new moon. And so this is really powerful because Saturn is the great meditator. Saturn does bring things like fear and awareness of time, perhaps the pressure that comes with that awareness of time and that fear. But he also brings commitment and hard work and humility, qualities we need to actually do something and get something done. And his awareness of time can feel like pressure, there's not enough time, if that's the state of mind we're in. But just like the new moon can bring a state of meditation as opposed to a state of depression, if we accept time and choose to use our time in a way that is actually expanding it, then he allows us to move beyond the constraints of time and of space. And really the most practical tool of this, or the most, useful tool, is meditation. There are, of course, other venues and avenues than just sitting down traditionally in meditation to access these these limits and move beyond them. But sitting in a maybe cross-legged position with your spine erect and allowing yourself to find that stillness within, whether you're concentrating on the breath, whether you're focusing on an object outside of yourself, or whether you have a meditation you walk yourself through, perhaps through the chakras. This capacity to sit with ourselves and eventually merge with all that is actually comes from Saturn. Our capacity to be alone, not feel like we need to be with other people and be out in the world. Our capacity to accept loss and grief and release our attachments to the things of this world, which is what keeps us engaged. This comes from Saturn. And it's interesting because Saturn and the sun are actually very inimical to each other. In the mythology, Saturn is the illegitimate son of the sun. Right? The sun was married to Sanjana consciousness, and she felt he was too hot. She had to take a break. And so she left her sister Chaya, who is shadow, in her space. And her sister ended up sleeping with her husband, Surya, the sun. And of that union was born Saturn, our planet of time and fear and commitment, and Yama, the god of death, the one who said to take his noose and bring souls to the afterlife, or have them come back to Earth in another form. And Yama also has to do with control, our capacity to put boundaries on things and to restrict ourselves in ways. And so the sun and Saturn don't like each other. And when they're together, we might feel quite a lot of dehydration. We can feel bloating and gas. It's good to drink a lot of fluids and do practices that help to release some excess vata, some of the excess wind energy. You can do things like drinking lemon water, warm lemon water in the morning. You can turn upside down first thing in the morning. Most of the practices are really good to do early on in the morning. And you can use like sesame oil or another moisturizing oil on your skin and do self-massage abhyanga. But this is also a time to reflect upon our power. Aquarius is directly opposite of Leo, where we are in our power and where we will have our full moon in 2 weeks. And there we feel like there's a hierarchy and we somehow need to be at the top of that. Whereas in Aquarius, we want to move into the background. We don't actually want to be the highest of anything. If we're a leader in Aquarius, we want to be a leader that helps everybody, or that brings community more together, that makes structures more fair, systems more accessible. And so our power here feels very humble, particularly with Saturn's conjunction. We feel very humble. We feel very, less than. And perhaps as though our voice doesn't matter, or as though our power doesn't matter, that we hold very little of that. So that's another thing we have to move beyond. The humility is powerful in that it allows us to see ourselves as one of many and not hold ourselves above others. But it lacks power because it tells us that we don't matter enough to do whatever it is we need to do. When, of course, each one of us has some kind of medicine, some kind of healing to offer the world that can help to pull us out of the corruption, that can help to pull us out of the shadows and out of the things that we don't want to see. So instead of avoiding it and being like, well, I don't really matter, what I do doesn't count, someone else will do it, someone more important than me will do it, or nothing matters, the sort of, nihilistic view that Saturn can have, just nothing matters at all, which in a sense is true. And part of what we're learning through our time with Saturn and through Shivaratri, but nothing matters and everything matters at the same time. We lose attachment to the outcome of our efforts, but we still put effort in. We don't strive for specific results as much as we strive to be in the most integrity we can in each moment, moving towards a goal, but willing to adjust that goal as we need to. And willing to take in other people's goals and other people's ambitions and what other people's ideas are, and really allow the collective to heal. 100 healers, not one really special doctor who has all the answers. Hundreds that come together that have different pieces of the puzzle that we can't maybe see what that person over there has, but their perspective is correct from where they're standing. And maybe we have a perspective from where we're standing that's also correct. And if we had that information of both people and all the others, we would have a more complete picture, and we would be able to see what healing really needs to take place and what medicine is required. So we have a couple other things that are really offering us both insight and a lot of potential to open ourselves up to expand beyond our limits. One of them is that Venus has just moved into sidereal Pisces. And this is where she's exalted. It's not the exact degree she's exalted. She's exalted later in the Star of Revati. But this is the place where Venus, our capacity for relationship, our capacity for happiness, is at its highest. And the reason is because in Pisces, we really start to move beyond the give and take. I give this and I receive this, and this makes my relationship right, or the niceties of romance and relating, where we are trying to compromise and make everyone happy. In Pisces, we lose the tit for tat, and we go into a realm of offering up our love, offering up our happiness, and trusting that it will return in whatever form, maybe not from that same person we just gave it to. And we have a true relationship with Source. So our relationship with any other actually comes through our relationship with Source, first and foremost. Pisces is the sign where we're merging with everything, where we are the least delineated and the most fluid. And so when our planet of love and relationships and happiness and beauty is in this placement, we really have that opportunity to truly love everything, to truly be happy, and not need something to have happened to make that be. To not need someone to have done something in order for us to feel that love or to feel that happiness. This is a very powerful placement. And if you're not on my newsletter list and you don't receive my newsletters, you can go onto my website, www.radhahomeyoga.com. And I do a breakdown for every week of what the weekly transits are for each of the different rising signs. And so on this particular last week, I spoke about Venus moving into Pisces for all of the signs pretty much. And because it's going to be a different thing for each person, right? It's going to mean something different for every different rising sign, depending on what Venus rules for you and what house Pisces is for you. Now we can see Jupiter is here, and Jupiter's been here for a while, since last May, and he'll continue to be here till April, but he's the ruler of this place. Now, typically when an exalted planet is joined the ruler, it's not considered to upgrade the intelligence of either planet, because they're both already in very high state. And in fact, sometimes it can feel a little crowded, like, I'm already exalted here, I don't necessarily need your help. It's like having the landlord of the house in your house and that it can cramp your style a little. In this particular case, Jupiter and Venus also have somewhat of an inimical energy towards one another. They're the two gurus. Venus is the guru of the asuras, of the beings without light. Jupiter is the guru of the devas, the beings that are moving towards purity and light, the gods. And they have a very different methodology. Venus is all about, being there with person to person and the reality of our feelings and our emotions and our greed and our lust and our, all of the things that we want in this world, that we desire. She's the planet of our desire. Jupiter's all about getting rid of our desires, moving above them, and trying to aim for that which is most high. We need them both because we need to be able to walk through our relations in order to actually get to the most high. When we sort of move around and just go, oh, these are my beliefs and this is so high, then we just bypass. We're just bypassing people's experience. So we need both. We need the experiential reality and to actually be able to relate to other people. And we also need high truths that we're moving towards so that we're not just staying stuck in the rut. Well, when Venus is in Pisces, we're already starting to lose a lot of that quality of relational exchange, as I said, where we're not, where we don't get stuck in the rut. We kind of move beyond it anyway. And Jupiter's presence here is going to really encourage that and bring us more into the philosophy, more into the ideals, more into that place where we are feeling expansive and wise in our relationships. It can also bring a lot of blessings and a lot of luck because that's just Guru's grace. That's what Jupiter does. He brings magnanimity. He brings, the blessing of fortune and the capacity to see things on the bright side, to receive the lesson. But these two together don't necessarily create relationship harmony. And Venus alone in Pisces doesn't necessarily create relationship harmony. When planets are exalted, they don't always bring us that thing that planet represents. In Venus's case, she often brings us beyond regular romance, beyond relationships. It can be very difficult energy, actually, in regular relationships. People who have Venus and Pisces are often very much in a fantasy world around relationships. They don't have necessarily grounded, practical relationships with people where their needs are actually met because they're so willing to love for no reason, because they find happiness for no reason. They're less likely to require the other person to give them back what they need in order to have a successful relationship. So you can see that Venus operating in her own signs of Taurus and Libra can actually be more functional in the real world. And then add Jupiter into the mix, and we do have a bit of a recipe for bypassing not others as much as ourselves. Living in a bit of a world of projection or confusion, of fantasy, and refusing to see the ways in which we might not be getting a return on what we're putting out. And Venus rules over conditional love. She does not rule over unconditional love. In fact, she does not do very well at all in the sign of Cancer, where we are unconditionally loving. Because we're not supposed to treat our romantic partners as we do a child. We're not supposed to just give and give and give and give. We're actually supposed to receive also. So depending on, the placements of other people and your own natal Venus, and of course, what this rules for you, for Aries people and Scorpio people, Venus is the seventh lord. So it actually very much has to do with relationships. And for a Scorpio person, it's the seventh lord in the fifth house. This is a very powerful Raja Yoga. It's bringing together the Dharma of children and creativity with relationships, the structure of relationships. For Aries people, it's their seventh and second lord in the 12th, which is Pisces' natural realm of escapism and fantasy and confusion and the subconscious. So on a very high level, could this bring us freedom through romance, through freedom, finding love, finding connection? Of course. But just like many of us struggle with meditation and finding the freedom in our consciousness merging with our mind, and instead find ourselves wallowing in more of a depressive state, similarly, many people who have this alignment, who are in Aries rising and have the seventh lord and the 12th, are going to experience their relationships through disappointment, through loss, or through, fantasy and projection. So this is something to be aware of. What does it rule for you? What does it mean? For Taurus and Libra people, it's their ruling planet, and it really doesn't have as much to do with relationships. So each person has a different relationship to the planet beyond just what it indicates, what its karaka is. It's important to understand. The other thing that's really helping us expand beyond our daily mundane existence and allowing us to really offer up this time, not just for our own healing, but for the healing of everyone and all people, which is really the beauty of this Venus-Jupiter, is it's not just about our personal relationships, right? We might be able to see the highest and best in our personal relationships, but we are hopefully using it to see the highest and best in everyone and really feel that love towards all people, even those that are difficult for us to deal with, even those that are maybe living in a state that we don't want to look at or don't want to see, or are corrupt and doing things we don't like, and being coercive or corrupt and harming other people. We can still find love for them. The other thing that we have running is Mercury is in Shravana, in this star of listening. It's Vishnu star, and it means to listen carefully. And we listen beneath the surface of things. We hear a little bit deeper. There's a real profound relationship with things like mantra here. And so if we are, honoring and celebrating this holiday, we can use chanting as a way in. These Sanskrit sounds are mathematically attuned. They actually open up portals within ourselves and help us link to the cosmos. And when we do it in conjunction with perfect timing, which is really one of the biggest blessings of Jyotish, of this science of light, this Vedic astrology, is the timing, right? That this is the moment when when it's the most potent, the most possible. And it's why it's really important to understand these things. I'll get back to Shravana and Mercury in a second, is because for many people, they're going to look up Maha Shivaratri and they're going to say, well, it's on the 18th and the new moon's on the 20th, which is totally true if you live in India, but if you don't live in India, that's not necessarily true. And so it's important to understand that these things are based on timing, and every new moon and every full moon and every holiday that is celebrated on the Hindu calendar has to do with this timing. And if you live in, say, Hawaii, it's a day behind, it's half a day behind. And likewise for people who live in California or the West Coast of the United States. So it's really important to understand that it's not just like Googling something and saying, well, people in India are celebrating on this day. It's actually an attuned time. There's actually a portal. And for us here, Mahashivratri is really the 17th. It's the night of the 17th is the 13th Tithi, and it moves into the 18th, which is the 14th Tithi. And then we have our new moon at 9:00 at night on the 19th, which, like I said at the beginning, is the 20th for other people, but not for those living in the West Coast or Pacific Daylight Time, or those living, west of that, such as Hawaii. So back to Shravana and the listening. Mercury here is giving us an opportunity to be a little more careful in our speech, because it's Capricorn. We choose our words carefully, and we are useful with our words, right? We want our words to actually mean something and do something. And because it's Shravana, we have this capacity to listen deeper than the surface of things, and perhaps use things like mantra to activate these different parts of ourselves. So we're in a time right now where there's a lot of shifts and a lot of change, and I've had a lot of people reaching out to me about all these different shifts and how, some people are feeling really uncomfortable with it, even though there is a lot of movement, and many of us were feeling kind of stuck. And now it's like, oh, good, things are moving. It's still uncomfortable. The movement is uncomfortable. The shifting of planets, a planet like Saturn that's been somewhere for 3 years, shifting. It's a lot of energy to move. Venus moving. Pretty soon Mars is going to move, and he's been in Taurus for 7 months. So these shifting energies, the best way to work with is to really allow ourselves to find some grounding, particularly when we have this many planets in air and water, right? We're going to need to find some earth in order to allow ourselves to, to really root down, keep our center in the midst of all the change, and allow the movement to move us from where we were to where we want to be, as opposed to just getting us all kind of up in the clouds. I'll often say in my yoga classes, particularly when people are doing maybe tree pose or just standing still, like you really need to have roots somewhere. You need to plant something, because if you're just living in this high state of your mind and what you want and how high you want to go, you're not planted in anything. And it's literally like a tree that's just floating around in space, and it's not growing out of anything. So it's impossible to nurture it. It's impossible to have it grow to its highest heights if it's not even rooted in the ground at all. And so, like a tree, we need to be grounded. And how do we do that? Well, we can actually literally work with the earth, right? We can work with plants, we can tend gardens, we can put our hands in the soil, we can visit nature if we don't live near nature, and allow ourselves to take our shoes off and put our feet on the ground. We can do breath work where we focus on moving the energy down through the root and moving it back up again, and allowing ourselves to really establish a grounding cord at the beginning of that, so that we're attached to the earth itself and we're not just ascending. We can do tangible things, not just meditate with Saturn, but help poor people or elderly people or sick people, or take care of animals. Saturn particularly likes black animals. We can, help children, whether that's teaching something, or, just watching children or helping them in some way. There's a lot of different ways we can access our relationship to that which is here on Earth, because we are here on Earth, right? Our goal is not just to get out of here. Our goal is to integrate that which is with all that is not, right? With consciousness itself. And so if we lose one or the other, then we're missing a big piece of the puzzle. We're missing half, actually. We can't just spend all our time in our worldly needs and worldly errands and moving from this and that, and our lust and our desire and our greed and our fear and our anger and these things, and just live in this sort of like animalistic state. We have to remember that there's more and reach for that. But if we're just trying to reach for that all the time, then we're going to be lost where we are, and we won't have any practical tools to get there. So now's the time to really dive into your practical tools. Use your yoga practice, use whatever your physical practices are, martial arts, surfing, walking, read tangible books, spend less time on the internet, spend less time on computers and cyberspace and this sort of information flow, and allow yourself to really be embodied. If you feel like moving a lot, use things like dance and swimming, even though that does add to the water energy. And also be mindful of like temperature and the need for warming yourself up. And, I'm in Hawaii and it's been very cold recently and wet and windy. And apparently we have a storm coming. So there's a need to get cozy and warm and grounded and earthed and connected to your family, and also to yourself, to your friends if you don't have family around, and to yourself. So I hope this is helpful. And if you have not already, you can go to my website, www.radhahomeyoga.com. I have reports on Saturn and Aquarius for all 12 signs. You can see the breakdown of that. Like I said, on my website, you can actually just immediately access the weekly reports for all 12 signs, but you'll get them sent to you if you sign up for my email list. I still have Mars in Taurus for all 12 signs until March 12th, when that shifts. And I'm regularly updating with these 2-week forecasts of the moon full and new. Happy Maha Shivaratri. Om Namah Shivaya. Aloha, namaste. This is Radha Home, and I'm here